Okay, let's dive in. We're going to unpack something pretty fascinating today, early digital audio. But think way back, early 1980s.
Yeah, it's a different world entirely.
Totally. Forget the power we have now. Back then, memory was what cost a fortune. And the ambition, way beyond what you could usually cram into a stomp box.
Absolutely.
So our focus today is this really unique, kind of fragile pioneer, the Electro Harmonix sampler delay.
It's such a cool piece of year history. And, to really get it, you need the context. EHX was walking this tightrope financially and technically. They'd already made some moves into digital. The sampler delay was like their third big swing. And their last one, really, right before this huge corporate meltdown.
That context is just crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
So our mission here isn't just to list features. We really want to understand how this hybrid unit, managed to merge, a standard digital delay with a proper digital sampler.
And why it got this cult status.
Exactly. Why it became this rare, almost legendary thing decades later.
And for you listening, this deep dive really shows you the very beginning of looping, pedals, and digital effects as we know them now.
Yeah.
Decades before they were everywhere.
Yeah.
We're looking at this flash of brilliance right before a financial collapse. It really laid some groundwork.
Okay, let's jump into that tension you mentioned, the origins.
Yeah.
Because the timeline is just, it's pretty wild.
It really is.
The sampler delay comes out in 1982. That's the very last chapter before Electro Harmonix went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Later that same year. It feels almost like this defiant last gasp.
That timing is absolutely critical. I mean, it's why it's one of EHX's most ambitious designs, but also one of the rarest. Production just got chopped off because of the bankruptcy.
So few were made.
Very few. But the goal was audacious for 82. They wanted to give musicians, both delay and sampling in one pedal, which was huge.
And it wasn't their first attempt at digital, right? It was part of a bigger picture.
That's right.
Yep.
It kind of completed this trilogy of early digital devices they were experimenting with. Each one sort of tackled a different angle.
Yeah.
First, you had the big one, the 16-second digital delay. That was all about long loops, overdubbing, think soundscapes, textures.
Right, long delay times were key there.
Exactly. Then there was the instant replay, much more specialized, just capturing short bursts of audio, playing them back instantly, like a proto-sampler, but zero delay function.
Okay, so the long looper, the 16-second, and then the short sampler, the instant replay.
Precisely. And then came the sampler delay, which was meant to be the synthesis, right? Taking the tech from both and putting it together. The best of both worlds attempt.
Which, given how expensive memory chips were, incredibly ambitious.
Totally.
So speaking of expense and ambition, let's talk hardware. What did they actually manage to stuff into this thing? Because when you see pictures, it looks like a tank.
Oh, yeah. Big steel chassis, needed AC mains power, no batteries here.
Definitely not convenient.
It was basically studio gear forced into a pedal format. And the core of it, technically, early 12-bit digital chips for both the delay and the sampling.
12-bit. Now, for you listening, we're used to 24-bit, even 32-bit float. 12-bit sounds almost primitive.
It does now. But back then, for a pedal, that was pretty cutting edge.
But that leads us to the big constraint, memory. You mentioned the 16-second delay could do, 16 seconds. What were they working with here?
Significantly less. The sampler delay only offered several seconds of total time. Maybe 3 or 4. It was actually shorter than the 16-second unit it followed.
Wait, that's nuts. A brand new flagship pedal had less sample time.
Yeah. It just shows how incredibly expensive those memory chips were. They had to make a tough choice, spread that limited memory across 2 functions.
So they prioritized the features, the manipulation, over just raw length.
That's the key insight, I think. They were going for versatility, not just duration. They figured the magic was in how you could mess with those few seconds.
Which brings us to the 2 modes.
Right. You had 2 main ways to use it.
Okay, let's walk through them. First, the straightforward one, delay mode.
Yep. In delay mode, it worked pretty much like you'd expect a digital delay from that era. You had a feedback control for repeats, a blend knob for wet-dry mix, standard stuff. Practical.
Okay, traditional delay, but then you flip the switch to sampler mode. That's where the performance angle really comes in.
Exactly. You'd capture a short phrase, a riff, a drum hit, whatever. But the crucial bit was what you could do with it afterwards. You could trigger it back instantly.
And mess with the playback speed. That seems to be the legendary part.
Absolutely. The killer control in sampler mode was the pitch speed knob. That literally changed how fast the digital memory was read.
Which changes the pitch, naturally.
Right. Speed it up, pitch goes up. Slow it down, pitch drops. Like Verispeed on a tape machine, but digital.
And you also had that essential trigger input.
Vital for playing it live, you could fire off your sample instantly with the foot switch, or plug something else in like a drum pad or another signal to trigger it externally. It was designed to be played like an instrument.
Okay, we got to talk about the sound, that 12-bit core you mentioned. We hear terms like digital grit or lo-fi thrown around. But what does that actually mean sonically? What's happening with 12 bits?
Yeah, it's where the tech limitation becomes like an artistic feature. So bit depth in digital audio is basically how many volume steps you have between silence and full volume.
Okay.
Modern 16-bit audio, like CDs, gives you over 65,000 steps. Sounds pretty smooth.
And 12-bit.
Only about 4,000 steps. So think of it like pixels in an image. Fewer pixels, it looks blockier.
Right, less resolution.
Same idea with audio. Fewer steps mean the smooth analog wave gets forced into these bigger, clunkier digital steps. The information that doesn't quite fit gets rounded off or clipped. That creates errors, what we call quantization noise.
And those errors, that noise, it isn't like smooth fuzz. It's that grainy, crunchy digital texture. That's the grit.
Precisely. So when the sampler delay was in delay mode, the echoes were technically clean, but they had this inherent grainy character because of that 12-bit conversion. Engineers probably heard it as a flaw back then.
But musicians,
especially experimental ones, heard it as a unique color, something to exploit.
and they really did, didn't they? This wasn't just for, like, practicing a riff. It became this sound-mangling machine.
Oh, totally. People use the sampler mode to capture weird little snippets, noises, textures for playback. Guitarists, bassists, keyboard players, even vocalists sometimes.
Capturing loops or short phrases.
Yeah, recording riffs or rhythmic patterns. Keyboardists used it for percussive hits or vocal stabs. But the real creative juice came from writing that pitch speed control live.
Because it wasn't just changing speed, it was digitally manipulating the pitch in real time.
Exactly. You could get these incredible, smooth, sweeping pitch bends. Record a note, then just slowly turn that knob. You get this amazing, almost liquid, tape-like warping effect, but it was purely digital.
That's pretty wild for a pedal in '82.
It really was. You needed complex tape setups to do that kind of thing before. EHX put it in a stomp box.
So EHX was really positioning this thing complex, expensive, probably a bit fragile as this creative powerhouse, part delay, part sampler.
That dual nature is key to its cult status, I think. It was perfect for noise artists, experimental folks, people who liked those lo-fi artifacts. They understood the limitations were part of the charm, part of the sound.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to its legacy. If it was so cool and innovative, why is it so incredibly hard to find one now?
Well, we circle back to that brutal timeline again, 1982.
The bankruptcy.
Exactly. The production run was incredibly short before the company shut down. So simple rarity is a huge factor. Originals are scarce.
And probably not the most robust things ever built.
That too. Those early digital electronics, the power supplies, they were notoriously finicky and fragile even back then. Finding one that works perfectly today, that's a serious collector's quest.
It's interesting, though. EHX eventually re-entered the 16-second digital delay, right? But the sampler delay itself never got a direct reissue.
No, not as its own dedicated pedal, but its spirit, its DNA. You can totally see its influence in later EHX stuff.
Like what?
Well, think about more advanced loopers they made later, like the 2880 Super Multitrack, with its complex looping and manipulation. Or even, the stereo memory man with Hazarai that has features like reverse echoes, sample triggering, pitch shifting. That core idea of playing with sampled audio definitely carried forward.
Okay, so let's try and crystallize this.
Yeah.
What are the main reasons this pedal is historically important? Not just for EHX, but for pedals in general.
Well, I think there are three big ones. First, it was a massive leap. One of the very first pedal format samplers that actually worked well enough to be creative. It bridged that gap between a simple effect and like a proper recording tool.
Okay, first pedal sampler, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Second, it just symbolizes EHX's insane ambition right up to the end. It was this final, big, expensive experiment before the financial crash. It really shows how far they were willing to push things.
A final creative burst.
Totally. And third, it really foreshadowed the whole looping revolution. This was '82. Affordable digital loopers from Boss or Line 6 were still, decades away. EHX was already exploring how musicians could interact with recorded loops live.
They were way ahead of the curve.
Way ahead.
So the Electro Harmonix sampler delay. It was this brief, kind of brilliant moment where delay and sampling converged. A little glimpse of the future, packed in this heavy steel box. right before the lights went out at EHX for a while.
And it created this sound, this 12-bit grit, that we still ironically chase today, often using sophisticated digital tools to mimic its old flaws.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Which kind of leaves you with a final thought to chew on. We live in this age of almost perfect digital audio fidelity. Crystal clear, 24-bit, whatever. Yet the music world, the gear world, pays huge money for these old, fragile, limited 12-bit machines, or for software that meticulously copies their imperfections. What does that really tell you about the trade-off we make between technological perfection and the creative spark you sometimes find in limitations, in those flaws? Maybe think about that next time you're aiming for perfect sound.